Minister for Communications, Digital Technology and Innovation, Samuel Nate George, has granted a 30-day moratorium to defaulting FM broadcasting stations who've been shut down for various infractions and persistent violations of regulatory requirement following an intervention by President John Dramani Mahama. Asaase Radio, Wuntumi Radio and Happy FM are amongst the about 62 stations which were ordered by the National Communications Authority, NCA, to immediately suspend their operations as part of enforcement of the Electronic Communications Act and its accompanying regulations. Hours after these stations went off air, President Mahama directed the Minister for Communications, Digital Technology and Innovation to work with the NCA to immediately restore the broadcast of radio stations that were shut down due to regulatory issues. Speaking on the floor of Parliament this afternoon, the Sector Minister, Sam George, gave the affected media houses the 30-day window. Listen.
The NCA's audit showed several cases of non-compliance with the regulation and conditions of broadcasting authorization. The preliminary audit revealed over 600 active radio stations with frequencies, many of which were inactive, expired, or improperly renewed. As of this morning, the NCA has commenced phase 2 of our regulatory enforcement following the broadcasting regulation frequency audit. This phase targets several categories of non-compliant FM stations whose operations contravene existing laws and regulations and includes the following. Group 1, 28 FM radio stations who are currently operating with expired authorizations. Despite the NCA instructing these stations to cease operations in 2024, several of the stations have continued broadcasting unlawfully. These actions constitute a violation of Section 2.4 of the Electronic Communications Act 2008. Group 2, 14 FM stations which were issued notices of revocation for failure to establish operations within the required 2-year period following the grant of their authorizations. These stations later requested technical inspections but have not completed the process and have continued to broadcast in violation of Regulation 54 of the Electronic Communications Regulation LI 1991. Group 3, 13 FM stations which applied for authorization to continue operating and have been issued provisional authorization but have not settled the provisional authorization fees in full. Mr. Speaker, without payment of these fees, their authorizations are invalid and their broadcast is a violation of Section 2.4 of Act 775. The last group of stations that we took action on this morning are 7 FM stations who have paid their provisional authorization fees but have not yet received final authorization in fulfillment of the technical and regulatory requirements under Regulation 54 of LI 1911. A few minutes ago, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, the President, directed that the Ministry of Communications, Digital Technology and Innovation work with the regulator, the NCA, to allow all the affected radio stations some additional time to correct the identified breaches within a defined time frame. Those who fail to do so shall have their authorizations formally revoked under the law. In line with this directive from His Excellency the President, the Ministry and the NCA have granted a further 30-day grace period to all defaulting entities. As a current government, the Ministry has also been instructed to waive all the applicable fines that should have been applied to the defaulting entities. Our goal is not punishment, but accountability, order, and the responsible stewardship of a public critical resource. This is not routine housekeeping. This is a declaration against impunity, abuse, and inertia. The airwaves do not belong to the powerful and connected. They belong to the public, and we are duty-bound to govern them transparently and effectively. Our fight is not against free speech. It is against lawlessness, asset misappropriation, and regulatory defiance.
In case you are wondering the stations that have been affected, listen to the Communications Minister list them.
FM stations that have been issued expiry of authorization letters for failure to apply for renewal. Life World Broadcast Limited, operating in Offenso, Akpini Communication Limited, operating in Pando, Victory FM in Aflao, Oracle Multimedia, operating in Nadoli, Jewel Group Limited, in Duaria Kwanta, Bolton Portfolio Limited, operating in Nkoko, the Ghana Institute of Journalism, operating in Accra, Obrempong FM, operating in Agona Swedru, KD Community Multimedia, operating in Kede, Skoja Limited, operating in Joje, Press Express Limited, also known as Daily Guide, operating in Accra, Obra FM Limited, operating in Takrady, Unity Broadcasting Limited, operating in Impoho, Jimas FM Limited, operating in Yeji, Kantanka Media Limited, operating in Cape Coast, Bewa Radio, operating in Yendi, Unique Gateway Communication Limited, operating in Nkoko, Ken International Company Limited, operating in Achim Swedru, Dreams Ghana Media, operating in New Abirim, Velvet Beam Foundation, operating in Asankregwa, Magic Group Company, operating in Selaga, Don Plus Multimedia, operating in Ho, Teslite Company Limited, operating in Wa, Global Media, Tepa, IMAX Media, Tamale, Limanya Radio, Wa, Pandai Star Radio, Ebiamo FM, operating in Jomoro, FM stations that were issued revocation notices, Act Forum Ghana Limited, operating in Akpafumimpiasem, Chinias Empire Limited, operating in Tumu, Confidence Commodities, operating in Swaman Dadieso, F5 Eagles Company, operating in Ajuafwa, Neat FM Limited, operating in Tamale, Primary Stars Limited, operating in Banda, Subampa Community Radio in Barakesi, Wasaman FM in Atieku. Mr. Speaker, number 9, Wuntumi Multimedia Company Limited, operating in Takrady. Number 10, Wuntumi Multimedia Company Limited, operating in Accra, Jimbali Community Association in Jimbali, Kingdom Dynamic, Kukrantumi, Pro Royal Investment in Tepat, and Resurrection Television in Takrady, Siadarak Enterprise in Edukrom, Bangu Company, Tamalin, Jam Multimedia in Kintampo, Chameleon Communication in Wa, Chaka Multimedia in Jasikan, Clickshot Multimedia in Shama, Free Minds in Tema, Gemsak Media Network in Nswatre, Mediacast Limited in Kumasi, Mobile Zone in Bolgatanga, Ultimate Multimedia in Tamale, West FM in Ho, Western Salam Company Limited in Takrady, Asaase Broadcasting Company Limited in Accra, Dynamic Chapters Limited in Wenchi, Global Media Alliance in Accra, God Steve Media Association in Atimpoku, Rejoice FM in Mim, Sankofa in Takrady, and Sweet FM in Chifopraso.
So you heard the minister list all the stations that have been affected. They have 30 days to, as it were, to quote the minister himself, do the needful, otherwise they lose their licenses. Havila Kekeli is a man in Parliament, and Havila, I'm sure that after the statement by the Communications, Digital Technology and Innovation Minister Sam Nate George, there were some reactions from members of Parliament. What did they say?
One key reaction which came from the minority side, particularly their leader Afeni Markin, has to do with the rationale really behind the president John Dramani Maham's clemency for that is the 30 days clemency for the various media houses to do the needful. According to him, it's as a result of public backlash against this very decision.
Do not break it and pretend to be fixing. The president's clemency is a belated thing. It's because of the public backlash. I would want the NCA and the ministry to be strongly guided by Article 296 of the 1992 Constitution. A regulation cannot overreach and override an express constitutional provision. In the list, the regulation is to guide, but not to impede and stampede the process. What happened today, where Asaase Radio was shut down, Wuntumi FM was denied the opportunity to broadcast, Happy FM denying the opportunity to broadcast, Mr. Speaker, must not ever happen again. Because, Mr. Speaker, when same happened yesterday, it received criticism. Mr. Speaker, I have with me, most respectfully, the Hansard of this House, October 19, 2017, column 998. Mr. Speaker, the work of a member of Parliament is to make his advocacy and rely on records, and rely on facts, rely on a reliable research team. And I cannot be making lame arguments here. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Sam George, at column 998, had this to say. I put it on record that the NCA failed to come before this August House in 2015 to approve their schedule of penalties. And that the schedule of penalties as used by the NCA in imposing this charge did not come before this August House of Parliament.
So that's the minority leader, Alexander Kwame Napenyo marking. And I expect the majority leader, Havila, to also respond to these claims by the minority leader.
Definitely he did. According to him, all this is as a result of the resetting agenda that every institution must comply with the various regulations in the country. And then he also gave a commendation to the president for coming to the rescue of the various media outlets.
Grateful for the update in Parliament. Havila Kekeli. Let's go on the line and speak to Senior Programs Officer at the Media Foundation for West Africa, Kweku Krobia Sante. I remember when Radio Gold and other radio stations were shut down in 2019. Media Foundation for West Africa was one of the groups that was against the shutdown. Also, Gabby took this matter up. Krobia, good evening to you. Thank you very much for your time on 505. Let me pick your immediate reaction when you saw the NCA communique and also the directive from President Mahama to the Communications Minister. How did you react to it?
Well, thank you very much, Valentina, for having me. My initial reaction is that it's an unfortunate development. We do this work, this advocacy for press freedom and media development issues in the hope that people in government and institutions like the NCA will, over the period, learn and appreciate the issues so that when these matters come up, they can be reflective, at least paying attention to what has happened in the years prior, so that they can be guided in their decisions. So to see that these things are happening again, it was pretty much unfortunate.
Well, one would say, yes, press freedom, but you have to operate within the laws. And the law was very clear that you have your license you need to renew, at least submit it 3 months prior to the expiration. You don't wait till it expires and then the institution wants to crack the whip and then we talk about gagging the media or denying the media the freedom they deserve.
Well, I agree with you, and it is our appreciation that as it matters, media houses and owners of media houses must respect the regulatory requirement that is demanded of them to ensure that they can be on air and they meet the standards. It's not only just about even money, but it's also about the quality of production and it meeting the standards according to the NCA's regulations and their LI 1991 or something, if my memory serves me well. So I'm just saying, yes, we respect that, but in our engagement with the radio stations and the TV stations and the electronic platforms, we need to be reflective of the wholesome or the comprehensive impact of such engagement, which is what the president is alluding to, right? If some of them are already in operation, they have their license expired, but they delayed in coming to repay, but eventually they have come to repay, and you want to say you didn't do a second inspection or first inspection and they have failed, and so because of that you are pulling them down and all that. These are stations that have been on air for some time, garnered listeners, have become a source of information for many people, access to information to many people. We need to approach research conversations paying attention to its impact to listeners, as much as we also want to pay attention to how we protect the standards and the professionalism that comes with it.
Going forward, what should be done so we don't come back to this? Because, I mean, this happened before. Ghanaians spoke. We didn't get a president to intervene on behalf of the media stations. They had to be shut down for 8 years and over. Now, this happens, and in less than 2 hours, the president issues a directive. The minister goes to Parliament, briefs Parliament, and says that based on the intervention of the president, they're giving the stations 30-day moratorium to correct their wrongs or right their wrongs. What do you think should be done moving forward so that we don't come back here where maybe the president might not intervene in future and you have people losing their jobs as a result of their stations being shut down?
Well, I think that first point is the need for transparency, right? We have been saying this year on, year out, different regimes. It is not very proper, as much as it lies within their ambit, that the NCA will wake up and say, upon the order or the direction of the minister, who, I must say, in the appreciation of issues, is a politician who, is from the executive side of things, to say on the direction of the minister, we are shutting down this number of radio stations because they have failed to authorize within a certain period or through an inspection, first inspection, second inspection, we are not satisfied of things like that. We are saying we should be open to provide a form of an auditing report that shows clearly how many radio stations there are, how many of them have passed the mark, how many of them fail to pass the mark. Therefore, even the public who are seated outside like us would review the documents and say, oh, indeed, this is where we stand.
That's
but
what the minister says was done, but the only thing is that they didn't make that audit report public.
Which is what I'm saying, that we should make these things public. In 2019, when they shut down Radio Gold and SYZ, this was the fight that we took them on, eventually leading to the court. We were saying, open it up, let us see. They had a sort of an inventory online where they showed first registration and the last renewal of authorization. When we started the fight with them, this is in 2019, by the way, we started the fight with them, immediately they had to pull down the data and clear that data so that we couldn't see, because clearly from that data we could see Ash FM, which was then
affiliated to the
aligned,
NPP.
Yes, affiliated to the NPP.
Had also defaulted, but
yes,
they were operating.
Online. Exactly. So we are just saying, in the name of transparency, give us the document, an auditing report that shows where everybody stands. Then we can all fairly, approach this that way. Secondly, and because of time, I think that we should approach this conversation in a way we give these media houses really ample time, a very well-structured system, an agreement that to say, this time come and pay, this time invite them, listen to their plea. Where we sit now, a lot of media houses are struggling, post-COVID, all the financial crisis that is going on across the world, even the country is struggling. Think of the smaller radio stations and things like that. So we need to approach these conversations, paying attention to all these contexts and nuances, and give the radio stations some respected time and engagement that helps them so that genuinely they are able to take steps to recover or make these payments. But when we jump in and say this is that, and so we are shutting down, it's quite worrying.
Cool. Grateful for your time.